Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Exploring faith and the future. Neil Johnson and Bible teacher Dr. Kameel Majdali.
As we're taking some time to look at this issue of abortion, Kameel, remind us how abortion became legal, because we don't just talk about an Australian context here, but going back to a very significant court case in the 1970s called Roe versus Wade.
All right, yes, Neil, first of all, just as a quick review, we've been looking at abortion, how in westernized, Christianized societies it was illegal because of the Ten Commandments and so on. Then there's, of course, been the Enlightenment and liberal theology and culture war that helped to move the West from its biblical foundations. So in the rebellious 1960s, when all these things began to really bubble over, well, it led into the 1970s. On the 22nd of January 1973, the United States Supreme Court handed down what they call a landmark decision called Roe versus Wade. And Roe versus Wade gave American women a constitutional right to have an abortion. As soon as Roe versus Wade came out, 31 U.S. states all of a sudden lost their abortion laws. They were overturned. Remember, the Supreme Court is technically not one that makes laws. They simply interpret laws to see if they conform with the U.S. Constitution or not. Now, the funny thing with Roe versus Wade, it happened in this atmosphere of relativism, not very Christian, rebellious 60s just behind them, and a deliberate ambiguity of when life begins. The whole issue is if the fetus from moment of conception is considered a person, then an abortion would be murder. But if there's ambiguity about the personhood of the fetus, then you could argue it's not murder because they're not yet a person. Even now, I'm hearing voices in the U.S., obviously from the more left-leaning side, saying, well, yes, they may be a person, the fetus, but they're not yet worthy of constitutional protection. So that's really the issue here. Anyway, Roe versus Wade was meant to be a compromise. It wasn't supposed to be a blank check. What they said is the first trimester of pregnancy, you can't argue that the fetus is a person because it's just protoplasm. Woman can have an abortion. Second trimester, the state can get involved to protect the life of a potential citizen. And in the third trimester, the state could get really involved. Now, that's called the trimester formula. That's what Roe versus Wade was based on, although that formula has long since been discarded. But the fact is, even if it was called a compromise, since 1973, the statistics are that the United States has had something like 55 million abortions, the same amount of people that perished in the Second World War.
And so you have a legal decision which creates a precedent that didn't just contain itself to the US where that decision was made, but it has overflowed the US and has affected the way the whole world thinks about abortion.
Certainly the way the whole Western world thinks about abortion, because America is understandably a leader, and what America does, others follow in lockstep. So what I'm getting at is Roe versus Wade was a very significant change, but to have it happen, certain sort of legal gymnastics needed to come to place. Those same gymnastics are being practiced even to our day.
Faith and the Future with Neil Johnson and Dr. Kameel Majdali from Teach All Nations. For more from Dr. Majdali, including books and DVDs on prophecy, Bible commentaries, plus today's and other episodes of Faith and the Future, go to vision.org.au.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.